Let's welcome in Republican Congressman from California and member of the House Budget and Judiciary Committees, Tom McClintock. Congressman, thanks so much for coming to the show. First and foremost, congratulations on being an elected Republican in the state of California. How'd you do that?
Well, there are a few of us left, and I think a lot of Californians are starting to rethink their political outlook as this state disintegrates. It's sad. It was gone from the golden state of my youth to a socialist hellhole, and people are starting, I think, now finally to connect the dots.
Yeah, I hope you can make California great again, Congressman. As a member of the House Budget Committee, you voted Sunday night to advance this legislation, clearing a key hurdle. Do you think there's enough unity and compromise when the bill reaches the House Rules Committee to get it done later this week?
There has to be, because without this bill, an average family's taxes are going to go up 22% next year. That's about $1,700 a year for an average family. That would be the biggest tax increase in American history. This bill stops that tax increase, and it removes taxes on tips and overtime and increases the standard deduction by $2,000. It's a critical part of the president's plan to revive our economy.
What about this Medicaid question? Can the bill move forward without cuts to Medicaid?
Well, first of all, it doesn't cut Medicaid. Medicaid will still grow $168 billion over the next decade. It simply slows the rate of growth. But it does that by requiring able-bodied adults on Medicaid to look for work, and it removes illegal aliens from the Medicaid rules. Those aren't cuts. Those are necessary reforms. We at least ought to ask, Medicaid was originally designed for the aged, the blind, and the disabled. I think we have every right to ask an able-bodied adult who is capable of working, at least to look for work as a condition of receiving Medicaid, because every taxpayer who is paying for this program has to do that every day.
Right. It certainly makes a lot of sense, and we're moving towards common sense now, right? But I do want to ask you about the former FBI Director, James Comey, appearing on MSNBC, which is an example of a lack of common sense, perhaps. The interview comes after the Secret Service launched an investigation into one of Comey's social media posts as a possible threat to the president. Comey addressed the post, which the president and many others believe meant assassination. Listen to this.
We were walking back towards the road, and we saw in the sand someone had arranged shells with numbers. And Patrice, my wife, said, "Why would someone put an address in the sand?" And I said, "I don't know." And we stood over it, and I said, "I think it's some kind of like political message." And she said, 86, when I was a server, she did a lot of work in restaurants, meant to remove an item from the menu when you ran out of ingredients. And I said, well, to me, as a kid, it always meant to leave a place, to ditch a place. I said, that's really clever. So then she said, you should take a picture of that. And I did.
Gosh, gee whiz, former director of the FBI. I wonder what that means. Are you buying it, Congressman?
No, he just stumbled upon it, had no idea what it meant. Well, that doesn't pass the smell test. Look, at best, this is a stunningly sophomoric act, and at worst, it's a veiled incitement to assassinate the president. And the fact that he posted it after 2 near-fatal assassination attempts against the president is shocking. Now, I don't believe he's going to be prosecuted. The threat was ambiguous enough to be protected as speech, although it is the most vile, stupid, dangerous, and hateful statements I've seen in a long time. But it certainly should be denounced by every American of goodwill across the political spectrum.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that I thought that congresspeople like yourself should be held to a higher standard. Certainly the former head of one of the most significant intelligence agencies in America should also be held to a higher standard. And you can't tell me this guy didn't know. So by doing that, as you said, with a couple of prior attempts on the president's life, he really, really crossed the line, in my opinion.
I think something seriously wrong is going on in our society. On Friday in the House Budget Committee, I saw a little girl of about 12 years old, wearing a sweatshirt that said "Free Luigi," referring to the accused assassin of a health insurance executive. That's a 12-year-old little girl. Something's going very much wrong, and I'm afraid it's being driven by the kind of stunts we've seen out of the likes of James Comey.
Well, Congressman, speaking of things going wrong, California is a sanctuary state, and they've been paying for health care for illegals for years now, putting the state billions more dollars in debt. What's it like for you as a congressman to work in a state that is encouraging illegals to come here and live here when you know as well as the president that they don't belong here without following the right protocol? And it's making it very, very difficult for the president to follow his agenda to kick out those who shouldn't be here in the first place.
Well, yes, and it's stabbing in the back every Californian that the state government is supposed to be serving. I mean, yeah, one of the most shocking developments of recent years is to look at the census data and to realize that we're seeing a mass exodus of people leaving California, which used to be a magnet for the entire country, and they're moving to places like Nevada and Arizona. Now, I can't conceive of an act of God that could do so much damage to this beautiful state with this most equitable climate in the Western Hemisphere, most bountiful resources anywhere in the country, poised on the Pacific Rim, turn that beautiful state into a less desirable place to live than the middle of the Nevada nuclear test range. No act of God I can think of could do that, but acts of government have done that, and we can see that in the census data. People are fleeing the state for places like Nevada and Arizona. This is the hallmark of socialist government. You see it wherever socialism takes control for more than a decade or so. You see exactly the same social and political and economic pathologies. You see rising crime, sky-high taxes, failing schools, shortages of fundamental basic things like electricity, gasoline, water, housing, and sky-high prices for all of those. And ultimately, you see failing businesses and fleeing families. That's what's happened to California. When they took over our most beautiful cities, like San Francisco, Los Angeles, Chicago, Baltimore, all the same results. People got to start connecting the dots between socialism and the damage it causes to society.
Congressman Tom McClintock, keep fighting the fight, sir. Thanks so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.